If God exists, then why did he make ugly people? Zoolander I?
Prison changed me! I am bad to the core now!
To listen to this review, you have to be ridiculously good looking. So we are talking about, of course, Zoolander 2. Now I have to say, I unabashedly love the first Zoolander film. I saw it at the cinema when it first came out and thoroughly enjoyed it, and I've watched it multiple times since, and I know it has its detractors and I understand why people don't like it, but I have to say I really enjoyed it. Now Zoolander 2 has come out obviously 2016, and it's a sequel that's happened in real time, so obviously the same amount of time has passed, and it kind of uses that to its advantage here. So Derek and Hansel, obviously Owen Wilson and obviously Ben Stiller, who also directed this, are now out of fashion, and we basically get a kind of caught up on the events that's happened since the last film right up until now, and it goes quite dark, I have to say. And it's quite interesting because they use the term out of fashion, and obviously it's quite cleverly used here, and they are, and obviously things have happened. We find both Hansel and Derek are basically kind of off on doing their own thing, basically trying to kind of get away from the world. However, a sinister plot basically that actually has quite sort of dark undertones involves both of these guys kind of getting back together to try and find Derek Jr. And obviously we've got some new faces here. Penelope Cruz, of course, playing Valentina, who is part of the fashion police. So what is this film like? I have to say, if you liked the first film, you'll pretty much like this one. But in a way, this film has a lot in common with Kingsman. It's actually quite a spy film in a lot of ways. It's kind of an action comedy rather than a comedy based on the fashion industry more. It's definitely more along the lines of something like 22 Jump Street. But I have to say, if you didn't like the first film because you thought it was kind of a little bit too out there, a little bit too spoof-like, then this film is even more so. This film, I would have to say, is far more outrageous, far more kind of spoof-like than the first film. So if you kind of thought this kind of hyper-reality went a little bit too far, it does it by about 10 times in this film. I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised with this film. I was consistently amused throughout this whole film. I thought it had a good level of pacing. I thought the characters are fun. There is an absolute shit ton of cameos on here. You've seen some of them in the trailers, but trust me, there's plenty that you haven't seen. My personal favourite being probably Kiefer Sutherland, who kind of does his Jack Bauer thing a little bit to a certain degree. So what was there things I didn't like about this? I have to say I enjoyed this film. If I had to pick some holes in it, I have to say, even though I found it consistently funny, I don't think it had the classic scenes in like the first film did, like the kind of Centre for Ants, for example, and the walk-off scene, which I can just watch and watch and watch. Although I found it funny, there was no kind of real standout scene for me. So it was consistently funny, but never, I didn't feel it was ever all out hilarious, to be honest with you, at any point in the film. The other thing I would say is the story that's kind of saddled with Hansel's character, played by Owen Wilson, was a little weak, and his kind of joke thing that he's got going on, I have to say, it just seems a little bit too stupid to me, and a little bit too far-fetced to a certain degree. Will Ferrell, though, he only appears kind of like halfway through the film, but when he's on screen, he's absolutely fantastic and completely dominates here. But it's a really fun film, I have to say. It's very meta, and it's odd that you have this coming out around the same time as Deadpool, which is also going to be another quite kind of like somewhat meta film. You've got these kind of two things. Even their marketing, in a way, are quite kind of competitive. So I find it's interesting that you have these movies kind of coming out together. But like I said, loads of cameos. There's quite a lot of action here, I have to say, like far more than I was expecting. This is what I'm saying, it's almost a little bit more like kind of Kingsman to a certain degree. If you can imagine the first Zoolander mashed up with Kingsman and then times it by 10, that's pretty much Zoolander 2, just not quite as memorable, I would say, as the first film. But nonetheless, I really enjoyed it. I want to give this movie an 8 out of 10. Now, I feel this will be somewhat divisive. There's going to be definitely people who don't like this film, but for me, I thoroughly enjoyed it. 8 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.